Hello and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today we are going to recap a 2016 movie titled 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead. The film unfolds in the aftermath of Muammar Gaddafi's fall, plunging Libya into a state of chaos. Amidst the turmoil, local militants seize the opportunity to raid Gaddafi's vast arsenal of weapons. These stolen arms ignite fierce turf wars among rival factions, transforming Benghazi into one of the most perilous cities globally. In response to the escalating violence, nearly all foreign embassies evacuate, leaving only a U.S. diplomatic outpost and a nearby CIA base operational in Benghazi. Both locations are safeguarded by a small contingent of private security contractors known as the Global Response Staff, GRS. As events unfold, GRS operative Jack Silva arrives in Benghazi. Upon landing at the airport, he is greeted by Tyrone Rohn, the commander of the GRS team and an old friend. As they navigate the streets toward the CIA base, they witness a shooting and soon find themselves encircled by armed local militants. Rohn swiftly reaches out to the base for backup, but CIA Chief Bob declines to send assistance, insisting that the contractors remain at their post. The militants demand that Jack and Rohn open their vehicle for inspection. Remaining composed, Rohn warns them that any aggression could trigger a U.S. drone strike. This threat compels the militants to relent, allowing them to escape. Once safely at the CIA base, Rohn confronts Chief Bob about his refusal to provide support. Bob stands firm, asserting that he prefers to let the locals manage their own affairs rather than involve the GRS team in potentially volatile situations. He emphasizes that the GRS members are not CIA operatives but rather hired protectors. After this tense exchange, Jack meets his new teammates, Geist, Tonto, Tig, and Boone, who will become his brothers in arms during this mission. As Jack acclimates to his surroundings, he is reminded to keep a weapon close for safety. Later, in his room, Jack reflects on his wife's disapproval of his decision to take on this assignment. Time passes before he has another meeting with Chief Bob, who clarifies that the presence of the GRS team is a government mandate rather than his preference. He stresses that he expects them to avoid engagement with local issues or interference with CIA operations, confident that his staff can manage without their involvement. Later that day, Rohn gathers the team for a briefing regarding an upcoming public meeting involving CIA case officers Vayner and Giuliani and a Libyan oil executive with whom Giuliani has been cultivating a relationship. Jack is tasked with posing as Giuliani's husband during this meeting, despite Giuliani's notoriously difficult demeanor. As the meeting unfolds, an initial calm quickly gives way to tension when the GRS team notices suspicious figures observing them from a distance. Recognizing the escalating danger, Rohn intervenes decisively to conclude the meeting prematurely, prioritizing their safety. Upon receiving the urgent alert, Jack swiftly ushers Giuliani and Vayner back to their vehicle. Initially irritated, the CIA agents' annoyance dissipates when they realize they are being pursued. During the ensuing car chase, Rohn takes command of the situation, skillfully evading their tail and causing the pursuing vehicle to crash into a nearby forklift. The team manages to escape unscathed. Later, Jack finds himself on a tense call with his wife, Becky, who expresses her disappointment regarding his mission. After hanging up, he joins a video briefing with Glenn Doherty, the GRS commander stationed in Tripoli. Glenn informs the team that U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens will be arriving in Benghazi on Monday, staying at the Special Mission Compound with only a minimal security detail. The GRS team is expected to be on standby to support his protection if necessary. Following the briefing, the team heads to the Special Mission Compound for a quick assessment. Outside, they encounter a group of local militia members known as February 17th. Once they navigate past them, they meet Scott Wickland and Dave Ubben, two agents from the Diplomatic Security Service, DSS, tasked with protecting the ambassador. As they survey the compound, concerns arise about its inadequate security and poor condition. Should a serious attack occur, it would be ill-equipped to withstand it. Nevertheless, Rohn reassures the DSS agents that their team is stationed just a mile away at the CIA post, ready to respond swiftly if trouble arises. On Monday, the GRS team, accompanied by their local translator Amol, encounters frustrated local fighters. They deftly defuse the tension using the Ombo gesture, a local sign of peace, before discreetly purchasing weapons from the group to trace the truck supplying them. Later, Ambassador Stevens arrives and meets with the team, articulating his mission to foster peaceful relations with the Libyans and support their journey toward democracy. While most of the team listens attentively, Tonto inadvertently dozes off during the address. Chief confronts him afterward, issuing a stern warning that this is his final opportunity to act unprofessionally or risk being sent home. The GRS team then escorts Ambassador Stevens to a meeting with the mayor of Benghazi but is taken aback when unauthorized journalists appear to cover the event. Despite this unexpected twist, the meeting proceeds smoothly as the ambassador delivers his remarks. Later that day, the GRS team cautions the DSS agents that they were fortunate this time. Once the situation stabilizes, the DSS introduces the GRS to Sean Smith, a surveillance specialist responsible for enhancing security at the compound. After these introductions are made, the GRS team returns to their base, reflecting on the day's events and the challenges that lie ahead. The following day, the base continues its routine operations as the team solemnly commemorates the 11th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Ambassador Stevens voices his growing apprehension regarding the security threats looming over the compound, particularly as he observes local Libyans scrutinizing the area. Meanwhile, the GRS members take a moment to connect with their families back home, a brief respite that brings Jack the joyous news that his wife, Becky, is pregnant, an uplifting highlight amidst an otherwise quiet day. However, as dusk approaches, a troubling shift occurs. Local militants begin to gather ominously around the compound. At sundown, they launch a sudden and violent assault on the outpost, unleashing a barrage of rifle fire and mortars. The attack catches Ambassador Stevens and his DSS agents off guard as the militants breach the building and open fire. In the ensuing chaos, Wicklund manages to lead the ambassador and Smith to a secure safe room. Meanwhile, from their vantage point at the CIA base, the GRS team witnesses the unfolding attack and prepares to intervene. Yet, the chief insists that the local February 17th militia should respond first, emphasizing that the GRS's role is to serve as a last line of defense due to their lack of official authority in the area. Aware of the escalating situation, Glenn urgently calls for a plane to be dispatched to Benghazi. As tensions mount, the militants encroach upon the safe room where the ambassador and his team are hiding. Back at the CIA base, Tonto enlists Amol's help for translations needed to communicate with the local militia. Despite their readiness, the chief firmly instructs Roan and his team to hold their position and refrain from engaging for now. Amidst the chaos, Geist successfully extracts Giuliani from another meeting. While news of the attack reaches the U.S. as the militants persist in their assault, the GRS at the CIA base anxiously await clearance to act. Their tension escalates when they see flames engulfing the outpost with Ambassador Stevens, Smith, and Wicklund trapped inside the safe room. Faced with mounting urgency and multiple cries for help, the chief reluctantly authorizes the GRS to assist. However, en route to the outpost, they encounter a militant roadblock that halts their progress. Just as Amol attempts to communicate with them, a rival militant faction arrives, igniting a fierce shootout. Meanwhile, Geist arrives back at the base with Giuliani and instructs the chief to lock down the facility before rushing out to aid those in peril. Simultaneously, Roan and his team reach the outpost, engaging in fierce combat alongside the February 17th militia. They are taken aback by how familiar and resilient the locals are in responding to such attacks. Battling through waves of militants, they eventually breach the outpost only to discover Wicklund, who has narrowly escaped from inside. However, their relief is short-lived as they realize that Stevens and Smith are still unaccounted for. As they comb through the burning wreckage of the building in search of survivors, they tragically uncover Smith's lifeless body, underscoring the devastating toll of that fateful day. Later, as the GRS gathers the surviving DSS agents, Amol urgently warns them that the militants are regrouping for another assault. With little time to spare, the GRS quickly collects their gear and prepares for a hasty escape. Just as they are about to leave, they are confronted with yet another wave of militants, forcing them into a fierce fight for survival. In the chaos, Jack attempts to guide Wicklund, urging him to turn left onto the road to head back to base. However, Wicklund appears disoriented and drives off in confusion, leaving the GRS to fend for themselves. Instead of following Jack's direction, Wicklund turns right, inadvertently driving straight into a throng of militants. Realizing the peril they are in, they attempt to evade capture but find themselves under heavy gunfire. Fortunately, their bulletproof vehicle provides crucial protection, allowing them to escape and reach the base just ahead of the GRS team. Upon arrival, the chief immediately suggests making a dash for the airport after learning that the ambassador is unaccounted for. Roan, however, argues that it's too risky and insists that they call for backup. The chief responds that help is too far away and emphasizes the need for evacuation. In a surprising turn of events, Roan asserts his authority, declaring himself in charge. Taken aback, the chief briefs the CIA team on an evacuation plan while Glenn makes his way to Benghazi. As the CIA agents hastily destroy sensitive records and prepare for departure, the GRS team readies themselves for another imminent attack. A local warns them to extinguish their lights to avoid alerting the militants to their position. Soon after, they realize they are encircled by hostile forces and brace themselves for an onslaught. When the militants draw near enough, they launch grenades into the compound, igniting a fierce gun battle. Despite the overwhelming assault, the team manages to repel the attackers without sustaining any casualties, achieving a small but significant victory. Later that night, Glenn finally arrives in Benghazi but is delayed by generals haggling over transport fees to the base. Meanwhile, at the base, the GRS and DSS remain vigilant against further militant incursions while CIA agents continue their desperate calls for assistance. Roan acknowledges Glenn's presence in Benghazi and permits him to join their efforts. Concurrently, Amol and Giuliani negotiate with the generals to secure a route for Glenn. As Roan learns of Glenn's situation in Benghazi, he struggles to navigate unfamiliar terrain and seeks help from local authorities, who prove uncooperative. Back at the airport, Glenn confronts the generals, warning them that if anyone at the base dies due to their delays, he will hold them accountable and threaten their lives. Meanwhile, at the base, the chief receives news that Stevens may have been located in a nearby hospital. At the same time, Giuliani meets Geist on a rooftop and shares food with her, inquiring if they have managed to secure help from the US, but she grimly informs him that it seems unlikely. Geist confesses his uncertainty but urges her to reach out to her contacts as a precaution. Meanwhile, Tonto implores Amol to prioritize his safety and leave, yet Amol resolutely chooses to stay. Jack voices his deep concern that if Stevens is still alive, Glenn might reach him before they can. Suddenly, they become aware of another wave of militants advancing toward the building. Moments later, the militants launch their assault. After a tense period, the attack subsides, leaving the GRS team anxiously awaiting the next onslaught. Jack admits his fears about how his family would cope if he were to die in a conflict he never intended to be part of. He grapples with regret over not staying home and worries about another man stepping into his role as a father. Roan echoes these sentiments, expressing his own anxiety about someone else raising his son. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted by news that Glenn and his team are en route. However, they receive the devastating confirmation that Stevens has died in the hospital. The men brace themselves for the impending wave of attackers, acutely aware that survival is uncertain. Some time later, Glenn arrives with reinforcements, including Libyan soldiers, which momentarily lifts the team's spirits. Yet, the situation remains dire as there are too many individuals to evacuate at once. Glenn instructs them to hold the base while additional vehicles are arranged. But as soon as he departs, the base is subjected to a brutal mortar and artillery barrage. One of the mortars strikes Geist, inflicting severe injuries, while another fatal shell claims Roan's life as he attempts to assist Geist. Ubin suffers a grievous injury, sustaining a broken leg. As Tig kneels in prayer over Roan's lifeless body, Jack mourns nearby. Geist eventually returns to the base and receives urgent medical attention, soon followed by Ubin, who is in excruciating pain from his broken leg. As the men begin to recover from the harrowing attack, they are horrified to spot another large contingent of Libyan militants closing in on the base. With the specter of a final confrontation looming, Tonto vows to fight until the end. However, upon witnessing the Libyans perform the Jumbo gesture, he realizes they are allies. Overwhelmed with relief, he breaks down in tears. Shortly thereafter, the GRS, DSS, and CIA teams successfully evacuate the base. The chief, filled with despair, contemplates staying behind, but Jack forcefully reminds him that doing so would only necessitate more lives being put at risk for his sake. Reluctantly, the chief agrees to leave, and they make their exit. Tonto closes the gates and invites Amol to join him in leaving, but Amol declines, apologizing for the turmoil caused by his countrymen. Once the Americans have departed, the Libyans enter to retrieve their fallen comrades. In the concluding scenes, the evacuees arrive at the airport and board relief planes. Giuliani and the chief express their gratitude to Jack and the GRS team for their service. Nearby, Tonto hands over car keys to the Libyan fighters, who eagerly drive off with them. The remaining members of the GRS reflect on the attack, speculating that it may have been orchestrated weeks in advance. Despite everything, they are grateful for each other's support throughout the ordeal and relieved to be heading home. Before leaving Libya, Jack makes a call to Becky to recount the events that transpired. With a heavy heart, he shares the news of Roan's loss and declares that this will be his final tour. He takes one last look at his fallen friend before departing the country. Thank you for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.